He's different now, Emma. People change. My mother's words echoed in my head as I stared at the wedding invitation on my kitchen counter. The heavy cream cardstock mocked me with its elegant script. Jessica Palmer and Michael Davidson request the pleasure of your company. Michael Davidson. Mike. The same Mike who had spent 4 years of high school making my life a living nightmare. The same Mike who was now engaged to my younger sister. I touched the raised lettering, remembering. The cruel notes left in my locker. The jokes that left me in tears. The day he told the entire school about my panic attacks, turning my private struggle into public entertainment. And now he was going to be my brother-in-law. My name is Emma Palmer, and at 28, I was about to watch my sister marry my high school bully. The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail, like I had been doing since the engagement announcement 3 months ago. Emma, please. Her message played out in the quiet of my apartment. I know you're not happy about this, but you're my sister. I need you to be my maid of honor. Mike's changed. If you just give him a chance. I deleted the message before she could finish. How could I explain? How could I make her understand what those 4 years had done to me? The therapy, the anxiety medications, the years it took to rebuild my self-worth. All because of the man she was planning to marry. My phone buzzed again, this time with a text from my best friend Sarah. You okay? Saw the invitation got delivered today. Sarah was the only one who knew everything. She'd been there in high school, had witnessed firsthand what Mike had done. She was also the only one who believed me now. Come over, she texted again before I could respond. I have wine and zero patience for family drama. An hour later, I was on Sarah's couch, wine in hand, trying not to cry. I don't understand how this happened, I said, staring into my glass. Of all the men in Boston, why him? Sarah sighed. Because he's charming now. Successful. The perfect eligible bachelor who just happens to have gone to high school with his fiance's sister. She wasn't wrong. Mike had done well for himself after high school, becoming a successful real estate developer. He perfected that charismatic smile, learned to say all the right things. Everyone bought his reformed bad boy act. Everyone except me. Your sister doesn't know what he was really like back then. Sarah continued gently. You never told her. How could I? I asked. She was only in middle school when it was happening. And after everything, I just wanted to forget. The everything I referred to was the incident that had finally ended Mike's torment. Not because he'd felt remorse, but because I'd had a complete breakdown in the school cafeteria. The panic attack had been so severe that I'd had to be hospitalized. After that, my parents had transferred me to a different school for my senior year. I'd never told them the full truth about what led to that moment. Never explained that it wasn't just normal teenage stress, but a calculated campaign of cruelty that had pushed me over the edge. Maybe it's time to tell her, Sarah suggested, before she marries him. I shook my head. She won't believe me. You've seen how she is with him. She thinks he's perfect. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jessica. Family dinner tomorrow night. Please come. Mom and Dad miss you. Mike wants to make things right. Sarah read the message over my shoulder and snorted. Make things right? Has he even acknowledged what he did? No, I said quietly. He acts like high school never happened. Like we're meeting for the first time. The next day, against my better judgment and Sarah's advice, I found myself driving to my parents' house for dinner. The familiar suburban streets seemed to mock me with their normalcy, as if this was just another family gathering rather than a powder cake waiting to explode. I parked behind Jessica's car, noting the expensive BMW next to it that must belong to Mike. Taking a deep breath, I walked to the front door. Emma, my mother pulled me into a tight hug as soon as I entered. We've missed you, sweetheart. You've been so busy lately. The gentle reproach in her voice made me wince. I hadn't been busy. I've been avoiding exactly this moment. Hi, Mom. I managed pulling away. Where is everyone? In the living room. Come say hello. I followed her, my heart pounding. There they were, my father in his favorite armchair, Jessica perched on the couch, and next to her, Mike Davidson. He stood when he saw me, that perfect smile in place. Emma, it's so good to see you. Something inside me froze at the sound of his voice. Suddenly I was 16 again, hearing that same friendly tone moments before he'd reveal another cruel joke at my expense. Mike, I said stiffly, not taking his offered hand. An awkward silence fell. Jessica broke it with forced cheerfulness. Come see the wedding plans. I've got everything laid out. I let her pull me to the dining room table, which was covered in magazines and sample cards. She chattered about flowers and place settings while I nodded mechanically, trying to ignore Mike's presence behind us. You'll be my maid of honor, right? Jessica asked suddenly, her eyes pleading. I know things have been weird, but you're my sister. I need you there. I glanced back at Mike, who was watching us with that same calculated smile. Did Jessica know that same smile had once accompanied him, telling me that no one would ever want me as a friend, let alone anything more? Jess, I started. Please, Emma, she grabbed my hands. Mike feels terrible that you two got off on the wrong foot. He really wants to make it up to you. Got off on the wrong foot. As if 4 years of systematic bullying was just a minor misunderstanding. Dinner's ready. Mom called from the kitchen, saving me from having to respond. The meal was excruciating. My parents and Jessica carried most of the conversation, while Mike occasionally chimed in with perfectly charming comments. I pushed food around my plate, feeling his eyes on me whenever no one else was looking. So Emma, he said during a lull in conversation, how's the graphic design business going? Jessica tells me you're doing well. The concern in his voice sounded genuine. That was always his talent, making cruelty sound like kindness. Fine, I said shortly. She's being modest. Jessica jumped in. She just landed a huge contract with that tech startup. Right, Em? I nodded, not elaborating. Under the table, my hands were shaking. That's wonderful, Mike said warmly. You always were artistic in school, weren't you? My head snapped up at that. He knew exactly how artistic I'd been. He'd once taken one of my sketchbooks and posted the pages all over school, complete with mocking captions. Emma? My mother's voice brought me back to the present. Are you all right? You look pale. I'm fine, I said automatically. Just tired. Actually, I should probably go. But we haven't even had dessert. Jessica protested. Mom made your favorite chocolate cake. Another time, I said, standing. I have an early meeting tomorrow. It was a lie, but I had to get out of there. The walls were closing in, my chest tightening with the familiar pressure of oncoming panic. I'll walk you out, Mike said, standing too. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. Everyone stared at me. I mean, no thank you. I know the way. I practically ran to my car, barely hearing my family's confused goodbyes. Once inside, I gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing the way my therapist had taught me. A tap on my window made me jump. Mike stood there, still wearing that perfect smile. I rolled down the window a crack. What do you want? Just to talk, he said softly. Emma, I know things were difficult in high school, but I've changed. I want us to start fresh, for Jessica's sake. I stared at him, hardly believing what I was hearing. Difficult? Is that what you call what you did to me? His smile flickered slightly. We were kids. I was stupid and immature, but that's not who I am anymore. No, I asked. Then why haven't you apologized? Really apologize, not this vague things were difficult bullshit. The smile disappeared completely for a moment, and in his eyes I saw a flash of the old Mike, the one who had tormented me for sport. Look, he said, his voice dropping lower. What's done is done. Jessica loves me, and I love her. You can either accept that and be part of her life, or... He let the threat hang in the air between us. Or what? I challenged, my voice shaking. You'll turn her against me like you turned everyone at school against me. You always did have an active imagination, he said, the smile returning. Jessica's worried about your anxiety issues, you know. She's mentioned how they sometimes make you paranoid. Ice ran through my veins. Of course, he was already laying the groundwork, just like in high school. Making sure that if I ever told the truth, no one would believe me. I started my car. Stay away from me, Mike. Be reasonable, Emma, he called as I backed out of the driveway. We're going to be family. I drove straight to Sarah's apartment, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. She took one look at my face and pulled me inside. What happened? She demanded. I told her everything, the dinner, Mike's friendly act, his veiled threat in the driveway. You have to tell Jessica, Sarah said when I finished. You have to tell her everything. She won't believe me, I said miserably. He's already started painting me as the unstable one. And who would she believe? Her perfect fiancé or her anxiety-ridden sister? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then we'll need proof. What do you mean? I mean, she said slowly, that people like Mike don't change. Not really. He's still the same bully, just better at hiding it. So maybe it's time to expose him for who he really is. I stared at her. How? I have an idea, she said, but you're not going to like it. She was right. I didn't like it. But as I lay awake that night, thinking about Jessica marrying a man whose cruelty I knew firsthand, I realized I didn't have a choice. The next morning, I called Jessica. I'll be your maid of honor, I said when she answered. On one condition. I want to help with all the wedding preparations. Every detail. I want to make up for being distant these past few months. Her squeal of delight almost made me hang up. Really? Thank you. This means so much to me. Of course, I said, forcing cheerfulness into my voice. That's what sisters are for. As I hung up, Sarah's words echoed in my mind. People like Mike don't change. It was time to prove it. Sarah's plan was simple but dangerous. Get close enough to catch Mike being himself. The real Mike, not the charming facade he showed everyone else. You'll be spending lots of time with them now, she pointed out. Wedding preparations, family dinners, parties. He'll slip up eventually. She was right. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm that delighted Jessica and seemed to unsettle Mike. I was everywhere. Cake tastings, venue visits, meetings with vendors. Always watching, always waiting. At first, Mike maintained his perfect act. He was unfailingly polite, even when I deliberately brought up high school memories during family gatherings. Remember the school newspaper, Mike? I'd ask innocently. You were on a staff senior year, weren't you? The newspaper where he'd published that cruel satire piece about me. His smile would tighten slightly, but he'd smoothly change the subject. But slowly, cracks began to appear. The first slip came during a meeting with the wedding photographer. Jessica had stepped out to take a call, leaving us alone. You're not fooling anyone with this supportive sister act, he said quietly, his charming smile never wavering. What's your game? I met his eyes steadily. No game, just being there for my sister. He leaned closer. Like you were there for her when she started dating me? Oh wait, you disappeared for 3 months. Better late than never, I replied, my heart pounding but my voice steady. His eyes hardened. Just remember, one word from me about your issues and everyone will remember how unstable you can be. I pulled out my phone and hit stop on the recording app. His face changed so fast it was almost comical. You. Me, I said softly, standing as Jessica returned. Just documenting the wedding preparations, for memories. It wasn't enough. One veiled threat wouldn't prove anything. But it was a start. The next incident came during a wine tasting for the reception. Mike had had a few glasses and his perfect mask was slipping. You know what's funny? He said, cornering me by the dessert table. Jessica actually thinks you've forgiven me. She thinks we're all going to be one big happy family. I pressed record on my phone again. And we're not. He laughed, an ugly sound. Please, you're still the same pathetic little girl from high school. The only difference is now you're pretending to be strong. Why are you marrying my sister, Mike? His smile turned cruel. Because I can. Because she's everything you're not. Pretty, popular, successful. And watching you have to stand there at our wedding, knowing you couldn't stop it, that's just a bonus. Click. Another recording. Another piece of evidence. But the real breakthrough came 3 weeks before the wedding. Jessica had asked me to drop off some paperwork at Mike's office. Contracts for the band he'd insisted on hiring. His secretary was at lunch, so I waited in his office. And there, on his computer screen, was an email he'd left open. An email to an old high school friend discussing his upcoming wedding. Can't believe I'm actually marrying her. But her family's connections are worth putting up with it. And watching her sister squirm is just icing on the cake. Remember how much fun we used to have with her in high school? Some people just make it too easy. I took photos with trembling hands. Finally, undeniable proof of who Mike really was. But as I drove home, doubt crept in. This would destroy Jessica. Was I doing the right thing? That night, I met Sarah at our usual bar. You have to show her, Sarah said after I shared everything I'd gathered. He's not just a reformed bully, Em. He's actively cruel, and he's using your sister. Better a broken heart now than a ruined life later. I knew she was right, but knowing something and doing it are two very different things. The next day, I asked Jessica to meet me for coffee. Just us, no Mike. She arrived looking radiant, bubbling with excitement about the upcoming wedding. The flowers are perfect, the dress fits like a dream, and Mike's been absolutely wonderful with all the planning, she gushed. I can't believe how lucky I am. My heart felt like lead in my chest. Jess, there's something I need to tell you. About Mike. Her face closed off slightly. Emma, please. I know you two had some issues in high school, but it wasn't just issues, I cut in. And it's not just about the past. I pulled out my phone, lined up the recordings, the photos, the email. Evidence of the man she was about to marry. What is this? She asked, her voice small. The truth. For the next hour, I play everything. Every cruel comment, every threat, the email revealing his real motivations. With each revelation, Jessica grew paler. He can't have meant. She stammered. I'm so sorry, Jess, I said softly. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I needed proof. I needed you to see who he really is. She stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her untouched coffee. I need to think. I need time. She left before I could stop her. I sat there, wondering if I'd just lost my sister forever. The next few days were silence. Jessica wasn't answering calls or texts, from me or anyone else. Mom reported that she called in sick to work. Mike was apparently frantic, unable to reach her. Then, exactly 2 weeks before the wedding was supposed to take place, Jessica showed up at my apartment. She looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. But her eyes were clear. I talked to some people, she said without preamble. Other girls from your high school. They told me everything. Everything you went through. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? She flinched. No, not without proof. Not until I saw who he really is. She took a shaky breath. I broke off the engagement. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by guilt. Jess, I'm so sorry. Don't be, she said firmly. I'm the one who's sorry. Sorry I didn't see it sooner. Sorry I didn't believe you when you tried to warn me. She started to cry then, real gut-wrenching sobs. I held her, like she used to hold me when we were kids and I had a nightmare. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. Mike showed his true colors the moment Jessica ended things, confirming everything I'd shown her. He threatened lawsuits, tried to turn our parents against us, spread vicious rumors about both Jessica and me. But this time, I wasn't his victim. This time, I had proof. The recordings and email found their way to his business partners. The rumors about his high school behavior reached his social circles. One by one, the carefully constructed walls of his perfect life began to crumble. Our parents were shocked at first, then horrified as the full truth came out. Mom cried for days, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. Dad threw himself into helping Jessica cancel wedding arrangements and deal with the legal aftermath. A year later, Jessica and I sat in that same coffee shop where I'd shown her the truth. I saw Mike yesterday, she said quietly, at the grocery store. He looked different, like all the charm had worn off, and now everyone can see what was always underneath. I nodded. That's what happens when you can't hide anymore. Do you ever regret it? She asked, showing me everything. It caused so much pain. I thought about it. No, pain now is better than a lifetime of suffering later. Plus, I smiled at her. It brought us closer. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. My brave big sister. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you back then. You're protecting me now, I said. That's what matters. Later that night, I found my old high school yearbook. There was Mike, smiling that perfect smile, voted most likely to succeed. Below it, someone had recently written in red ink, most likely to be exposed. I closed the book, thinking about cycles of abuse and the courage it takes to break them. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't standing up to your bully, it's standing up for someone else, even when it means causing them pain in the process. Sarah called as I was putting the yearbook away. Hey, she said. You okay? I know seeing him around town can't be easy. I'm okay, I replied and meant it. Actually, I'm better than okay. For the first time since high school, I feel free. Because he can't hurt you anymore. Because he can't hurt anyone anymore. I corrected. At least not the way he used to. After we hung up, I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked on a blank document titled My Story. I'd been thinking about writing it for months. Everything that happened, both in high school and with Jessica's wedding. Not for revenge or exposure, but for others who might be going through something similar. Sometimes, I typed, the worst bullies aren't the obvious ones. Sometimes they're the ones who smile the brightest, charm the most people, make you doubt your own experiences. But here's what I learned. Truth has a way of rising to the surface. And when it does, you have a choice. Stay quiet to keep the peace, or speak up to prevent more harm. I paused, thinking about Jessica's question. Did I regret it? I chose to speak up. I continued typing. I chose to risk everything. My relationship with my sister, my family's peace, my own sense of safety. Because sometimes love means telling hard truths. Sometimes protecting someone means hurting them first. It's not easy. It's never easy. But neither is living with the knowledge that you could have prevented someone else's pain and chose not to. I sat back, reading what I'd written. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Maybe someone else would read it and find the courage to speak up. Maybe someone else would recognize the Mike in their life before it was too late. The sun was setting outside my window, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere across town, Jessica was probably still processing everything that had happened. Somewhere else, Mike was living with the consequences of his actions. And here I was finally writing my own story. Not as a victim, not as a survivor, but as someone who learned that the opposite of cruelty isn't kindness. It's truth. The truth, no matter how painful, sets us free.